Jeremy may look like an ordinary 14-year-old at first glance. If you saw him walking down the street wearing a hoodie, carrying a backpack, or laughing with friends his age, nothing about his personality would immediately suggest that he is different from any other teenager navigating school, friendships, and the early stages of chasing a dream. But the illusion disappears the moment you stand next to him. Conversations suddenly require you to tilt your head upward. Crowds instinctively part when he walks by. Cameras come out. Whispers follow. Because Jeremy is not just tall, he is extraordinarily tall. At only 14 years old, he already stands at 7 feet 3 inches, and his growth shows no signs of slowing down. Every new measurement seems to rewrite expectations, and every passing month raises a question that basketball fans, scouts, and analysts cannot stop asking. What exactly are we witnessing? Height alone has always fascinated the basketball world. From playground courts to professional arenas, towering players capture attention instantly. But Jeremy's story goes deeper than simple measurements. Coaches who have worked with him often point out that his greatest asset is not merely his size, but his mindset. He possesses an intense competitive spirit, a willingness to learn, and a natural feel for the rhythm of the game that cannot be taught through drills alone. Those who train alongside him describe a player who hates losing, who studies his mistakes, and who approaches basketball not as a novelty created by genetics but as a craft he genuinely wants to master. Where Jeremy truly commands attention, however, is on the basketball court. Highlights of him dunking effortlessly have flooded social media feeds. Clips show him blocking shots without jumping, grabbing rebounds far above opponents' reach, and finishing plays that look almost unfair. For casual viewers, these moments appear almost comedic, a giant playing among children. But scouts are not losing sleep because he can dunk on smaller players. Anyone standing nearly 8 feet tall in shoes could dominate younger competition physically. The real question haunting evaluators is far more complicated. Is Jeremy's size a once-in-a-generation advantage, or could it ultimately become the very obstacle that prevents him from succeeding at the highest level? The uncomfortable truth about extreme height in professional basketball is rarely discussed openly. While being tall is beneficial, there exists a threshold beyond which height becomes a liability rather than an advantage. History provides sobering evidence. Only a handful of players taller than 7 feet 5 inches have ever appeared in NBA games. Among them, very few sustained long, productive careers. Injuries, mobility limitations, and physical strain often shorten their time in the league. The human body simply was not designed to endure years of elite athletic competition at such extreme proportions. For every towering prospect who generated excitement, many quietly disappeared from the spotlight. This reality forces observers to confront a difficult paradox. Jeremy's height makes him unique, yet it also places him in one of the most uncertain categories in basketball history. Every inch he grows increases both his potential and his risk. That duality shapes how scouts evaluate him. They are not just asking how dominant he looks today. They are trying to predict whether his body will allow him to compete years from now. What separates Jeremy from many previous giants begins with his relationship to basketball itself. Unlike players who discovered the sport only after their height attracted attention, Jeremy's journey started long before anyone imagined he would become one of the tallest teenagers on earth. He picked up a basketball at 6 years old. At that age, he was not unusually tall compared to his peers. He simply loved the game. He watched highlights, practiced dribbling for hours, and dreamed about making creative plays, rather than merely standing near the rim. This early foundation matters more than people realize. Many extremely tall prospects enter organized basketball late, often treated as long-term projects whose development starts years behind their peers. They spend crucial developmental seasons learning basic coordination while others refine advanced skills. Jeremy, however, developed ball skills and court awareness before his growth accelerated. By the time his height began to separate him from everyone else, he already understood spacing, passing angles, and game flow. Interestingly, his basketball inspirations were not players defined solely by size. He admired versatile stars known for skill and creativity, athletes who handled the ball, made intelligent reads, and influenced games in multiple ways. That mindset shaped how he approached training. Instead of relying only on height, he tried to play like a complete basketball player. His rapid growth still surprised everyone, including his family. Around age 10, Jeremy measured approximately 6 feet 5 inches tall, but not unprecedented for a young athlete. Over the next few years, however, his body changed dramatically. Growth spurts arrived in waves. By 14, he had reached 7 feet 3 inches. Soon after, another surge pushed him to 7 feet 6. Concerned about possible medical conditions such as gigantism, his parents sought medical evaluations. Tests revealed no underlying disorder. His growth appeared to be the result of rare but natural genetic variation. These developments sparked intense curiosity about how tall he might eventually become. Comparisons began emerging between Jeremy and other unusually tall prospects from basketball history. Analysts speculated about trajectories, projecting heights rarely discussed in modern sports. While predictions remain uncertain, the possibility that he could approach or even exceed 7 feet 10 inches has fueled widespread fascination. Yet stories and measurements do not determine basketball success. Skill execution does. When analysts look beyond viral highlights and study full-game footage, they discover traits that make Jeremy more intriguing than a simple novelty act. One of the most surprising aspects of his game is mobility. Players of similar height often move cautiously, appearing stiff or slow when changing direction. Jeremy, by contrast, runs the floor with noticeable fluidity. His strides are long but controlled, and he shows coordination uncommon for someone his size. Ball handling represents another unexpected strength. There are sequences where he brings the ball up the court himself, navigating traffic while maintaining control. These moments challenge traditional expectations of extremely tall players, who historically operate almost exclusively near the basket. Jeremy demonstrates comfort handling the ball, scanning defenses, and making decisions rather than immediately passing responsibility to smaller teammates. His shooting mechanics also draw attention. Instead of forcing awkward motions created by long limbs, his release appears natural and balanced. Coaches note that developing consistency will take time, but the foundation exists. In the post, he already experiments with footwork moves rather than relying solely on height advantages. This willingness to learn technical skills suggests long-term developmental potential. Perhaps most encouraging is his feel for the game. He recognizes when teammates are open, anticipates defensive rotations, and understands spacing concepts that many young players struggle to grasp. These instincts typically emerge only after years of experience, reinforcing the importance of his early start in basketball. Still, honesty requires acknowledging weaknesses. Jeremy remains extremely thin relative to his height. Stronger opponents can displace him physically, especially in crowded paint situations. Conditioning is another challenge. Extended playing time currently leads to fatigue, which is expected given his ongoing physical development. Defending smaller, quicker players on the perimeter remains largely untested territory, leaving questions about versatility at higher competition levels. Additionally, much of his dominance has occurred against significantly smaller opponents. Evaluators caution against overreacting to highlights without considering context. Performing well against elite competition presents a completely different challenge. Shooting percentages, decision-making speed, and defensive awareness all face harsher scrutiny when athletic gaps narrow. His first major exposure to high-level international competition arrived during the FIBA Under-16 Americas tournament, where he represented Canada. This event gathers top young players from across the Americas, many already preparing for Division I college programs. Jeremy entered the tournament as one of the youngest participants, competing against players 2 years older with far more elite training experience. The tournament served as a reality check and a valuable learning opportunity. He contributed modest statistics, points, rebounds, and defensive plays that helped his team but did not dominate. Against the strongest opponents, particularly the United States, the speed and physicality challenged him. For the first time, he encountered players capable of matching athletic intensity and exploiting inexperience. Context matters greatly here. Transitioning directly from youth competition to international play without years in elite development systems is an enormous leap. Many prospects gradually climb competitive levels. Jeremy was thrust into the deep end almost immediately. While his numbers were not eye, coaches valued his willingness to